Once again, good evening. Actually, I don't need the cane. Are you good? Are you good? I don't really need the cane, but that's how you quiet a crowd down and come in a little bit shit tonight. No, actually, I do need to have surgery. But anyways, a couple of quick things here that I want to say tonight. And the first one is Rita Troxel. For years and years and years, I talked about doing this, but as my wife said, you come up with all this crazy shit, and I have to do it. Well, this time around, Rita did it. Rita went and got 50 authors, I believe. Rita, where are you?
Yes, 52.
52 authors that put it together 70 plus stories. And if you weren't blessed enough to be here in the 70s, as they say the 60s, please pick up the book because it'll give you a glimpse. We also had Dr. Mader here with his book, doing some book signing. We'll talk a little more about it later. But I wanted to do this for a long, long, long time, and then Rita did that. And then we did the readings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, it's time to get up on my ass to do it. And we had such a great reception for it last time. And last time the theme was, it changed my life. This time it's my roots, which is pretty broad. And I'm not going to give away what the next one is, but I know my wife wants it to be after the holidays, but I'm probably going to do it, maybe mid-December here. I want to shout out to some of the people at the studios. What an amazing place. What a thank. What a community place. It's one of the places in Key West that made a promise and delivered. And that's an amazing thing to have. So Aaron, Michelle, and the Wizard of Oz, Lauren. Right? You may not see her, but you know who really runs the show. In any event, real quickly, storytelling is the oldest form of art. Storytelling is one of the oldest ways to pass history on to the next generation, and it still lives very well in many, many places. The obvious part of it is the listener, and that is because whether I tell you a sad story, a scary story, a sexy story, a tragic story, it doesn't matter. You get to live vicariously to that person's story. And many times you go, shit, I'm glad I wasn't there, right? But you get to live to that. What a lot of people don't understand is the reciprocal side of that. And that is when people get up here and tell a story, what they're really doing is sharing with you something that's part of their soul, right? And it can be something sad, or it can be something funny, but in that act of telling you their story, it sort of releases some of that. And you get to share it. Sometimes you get to shoulder it for them. So it's really a win-win situation. So we structured this real simple. Ready? My brother, Frank-Noll.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Lady Mayor, Tony, thanks very much for asking me. Tony is, I go back a couple of years. I'm the owner of Old Town Fitness, and Tony walked into the gym about 20 years ago, and he hasn't stopped talking since then. You know, he's just sometimes he's a tough cookie, you know. But I've got a great photograph of him. His head all cut open. He had a lovely beard at the time, and he's full of blood. And I said, "Are you going to stop?" He says, "When I'm dead." That's what he said. That's what he said. So that's it. So I'm from Dublin, Ireland. This is my accent. I speak James Joyce English. I'm trying to cut out the swearing for Lent, and I've been successful for about an hour. So here I am. Yeah, I came to Key West in 1992, and I come from Dublin, Ireland, and I'm from the north side of the Liffey, in a place called Finglas West, and I ended up at Key West in 1992, just after Hurricane Andrew. And I remember getting off the plane in Miami, and thinking, said, geez, this is a great country. They've central heating in the streets. And I was wearing a pair of boots and a big Clancy jumper. And my mother had knitted me. And I went down and I came down to Key West, and I remember thinking there must be some big people in Key West, because it seemed like a big joint had stepped on everything. Everything was flattened. Homestead had a big mountain, trash and everything. And I remember the bus used to park at the firehouse just off Duval Street. There's a Greyhound bus station there where the old police station was. And I remember thinking, this is a great place. It's a fantastic place. And I walked down Duval Street, but I had one bag, no arse in my trousers. And I walked down and I looked, there was an Irish flag, and it was a place called Bogart's. And I went into Bogart's, and a guy said to me, the guy behind the counter said, Jesus Christ, what are you doing here? And I said, buddy, there was a guy from my home village. And he said, can you paint or can you work in roofs? I said, I can. And I told that was a lie. And I got a job and I put the roof on the customs house. That was my first job in the customs house in the Key West. But Key West has changed my life. I own a gym now in Key West, and it's probably it has changed my life. I remember walking down and as I said, walking down the street, and I was I was a hard man for the drink at the time. And I'm 27 years sober this year, please God. And I remember I stopped outside of a pub called Chi-Chi's. And you might remember, and I'm thinking, jeez, I'd love a pint there. You go in there and drink a pint. It was all people dancing and singing and fighting. And I'm thinking, I said, I'll go in and spend my last $20. And something happened, and it changed my life. And I said, no, I'll go into that gym, Iron Bodies. It was called Iron Bodies at the time. And I went in and I said, I'd like to sign up for 3 months. And the guy behind the counter says, do you want to blow? And I said, no. I said, I'm here to work out. He said, suit yourself. So anyway, it was a great place at the time, And as I said, it was an eye opener for me, It really was, because I sort of had a hard time, adjusting to the language. I was telling the mayor, I became a truck driver for Mayflower, and I travelled all over this wonderful, fantastic country, which I'm glad to call my home now, I lived in Key West long, But in my early days, I travelled across amazing places from Wyoming, Cheyenne to New Orleans. We have Jay Morris from New Orleans, but I was in Mobile, Alabama one time, and I remember sitting down and I ordered off the menu, and the waitress looked at me. She just said, huh? And I was at the counter. I said, she said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Ireland. And she said, Orleans? And I said, no, Ireland. And I said, yeah. She said, I got folk in Orleans. And I tried to describe, where I was British. And she said, oh, you're English. Yes. And I described the leprechaun to her, and she said, oh yeah, I know where you're from now. So that was I've experienced all stuff like that all my days of travel in the United States. But as I said, Key West is absolutely unique to me. I tell you what Key West meant to me. I done a podcast the other day for gyms and stuff like that, and I went out, and the guy said, we're going to have a follow-up podcast. He said, I want you to speak to this guy. But I didn't know in my naivety that this was a sales pitch he was giving me. So he said to me, he says, how many members have you got in your gym? And I said, 450, whatever it is. And he said, yeah. He said, I'll show you a way of squeezing more money out of them. And I stopped him. I said, have you ever been to Key West? And he said, no. I said, well, then you don't understand. We don't squeeze anybody here. We take care of business. We take care of our own. And I was relaying the message as well about, I know a short time, but Hurricane Irma, a big massive tree fell on the building, and all the chainsaws and all the sort of the stuff that we cleared up was rented out to contractors. And I had no way of getting the tree off the building. I had no way. And I bought 12 axes, and I asked for volunteers. And everyone for 3 days we were on the roof of the building chopping down the tree. And we got it off. So that to me is where Key West is, and Key West is very dear to my heart. You know, we might walk from different sides of the tracks and have different things, but it's a community, it's home for me. You know, and Key West opened its arms to me when I first came to the United States. It brought me in, accepted me for all my faults, straightened my arse out, and started go and do your good work, Frank. You know, I love this place, and I love most people in here, you know, and around the town. Most people.
Yeah.
And I tell you, you know, Tony again has been, you know, been very inspirational in my life. Tony, I remember Tony used to hold court at Sandy's Cafe every morning, and you'd hear him before you'd see him. And I tried to sneak by, you know, and the other far side, the laundromat area, and I'd order through the laundromat rather than meet him, you know. And he'd sort of, he'd have his little spies out. And he'd call you across, but he's been a great inspiration for many, many people. I remember tough times in Key West, you know, negotiations where, you know, we're looking for money and stuff like that, and Tony we did forefront, and would always sort of come through, you know. So I'd like to finish up with this, you know, Rob McCree, the love of my heart is for this community. You wonderful people that have made this emigrant more than happy to be with Yaniz tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I walked into his gym, said, "How you doing?" He said, "How you doing?" I was done. I was in already. And when he said, "Let me show you the gym here," I said, "All right." So we started walking in, and I says, "Oh, the weights are all rusty." He goes, "Yeah, you know, some people." I said, "Kind of smells like, you know, piss and beer or sweat in here." "No beer, but that's what it smells like." And then right in the middle of that, you know, guy, it's like February or whatever, and a guy walks in. He says, "Hey, by the way, do you have a sauna?" Frank looked at him without blinking and said, "Only in the summertime." Again, our format was not to steal any thunder from anybody, so I want to bring somebody that I love dearly, Karen Frank-Noll.
Was born on Easter Sunday, 1932, Hollywood, California. He was a Jewish boy, nicknamed Bunny, and always connected to that Christian holiday by that name. We believed he was the Easter Bunny, as did my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. His father worked for the children's division. He was the head of the children's division of the Federal Theater Project. And they were doing a little show called Pinocchio on the East Coast. Very successful. And they moved from Hollywood, California to Greenwich Village in New York and opened on Broadway. That was 1938. About 6 months later, they came under the magnifying glass of the House Committee on American Activities. And my grandfather and many of the cast members and crew were accused of being communists. He wasn't a communist. He was a social democrat, no doubt about that. But that's a story for another day. So they closed down the show. People stopped coming and went through kind of tough times. Grandpa couldn't get anybody to fund his projects, and my grandmother opened an art gallery in Greenwich Village to support the family. They were a very artistic family, amazing. Well, it was kind of sad in their house, but one day Grandpa came home in high spirits and said, "Bunny, grab your coat, we're going out." Papa, where are we going? It's a surprise. They got on the subway and headed to the Bronx. And when they got off, Grandpa put a blindfold on Dad. And he's like, "Papa, why can't I see where I'm going?" It's a surprise. And as they walked several blocks, he started smelling hot dogs and popcorn and peanuts. And when Grandpa took the blindfold off, he was in Yankee Stadium behind home plate. My father that day became a lifelong baseball fan. Fast forward a few years, married, few kids, we moved to Curacao, which was our paradise, and we lived there until the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when his employer felt it wasn't safe to be there anymore and put us on a plane, sent us back to New York. This was October. It was cold in New York. And then it snowed, and I had to wear boots, and I didn't even have to wear shoes when I went to school in Curacao. But spring came, and Dad came home one day in high spirits and said, "Karen, tomorrow you're coming into the city with me. We're going to take the train in." Well, you got it. We went to Yankee Stadium. I was 8 years old, same age as he was, when I went to my first baseball game with Dad. He was a lifelong fan. He knew everything about the game, and he loved teaching us about it. July 2019, I was getting ready to announce that I was going to run for Fantasy Fest Queen, and I got a phone call from my dad. He said, "I'm here with your sisters and your brother. I wanted to tell you all at the same time, I have pancreatic cancer. Doctors say I need to get my things in order because 6 months is the average life after diagnosis. Get your bucket list fulfilled." So we started planning. We planned a retirement party. He was 87 years old, and he was still working as a consultant for nonprofits. He planned a Mediterranean cruise that was a lifelong dream. And we planned to go to a baseball game in Milwaukee. We were living in Wisconsin at the time. Well, I think we all know what happened in the spring of 2020. That baseball game did not happen. So we planned for the next year. Guess what? He was still alive. We went to that baseball game, spring of 2020. Family, siblings. We all talked about his first game and the first time we ever went with him, each one of us. In August 6th of 2020, well, about 2 weeks before that actually, I got a phone call. "Karen, you need to come." Now, mind you, this is 2 years after he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a 6-month life expectancy. And I went the next morning, got on a plane, and we spent a couple of weeks with Dad started telling a story about the first time he went to a baseball game with Dad, and how they created this group called the Boys of Summer that traveled all over the country, going to spring training and games. And the rest of us, the siblings, we were all in the room listening to this story. And Dad had kind of orchestrated this. He had gotten rid of everybody else. There was a son-in-law who had an ileostomy bag burst, and he had to leave. And another one who had a problem at work and had to go, and a couple of the grandkids had to leave because of sports things. So it was just the kids and Alan telling the story of their first baseball game. And we watched my father's breathing change. We knew what was happening. We stood up by Dad's bed, and Alan finished his story, and my father died. At hospice, when you leave, you come in the same door that you came in. You go out the front door. The body is prepared. The family walks them out. The staff lines the hall, and they play a song of your choice. And our choice for my dad was "Take Me Out to the Balcer."
Good. You're gonna laugh and you're gonna cry. And to me, that's the bond that humanity has, and I really love that. So again, no stealing of any thunder. Next up is a good friend who's been dying to tell her story, and we're glad she's here, Diane Hilton-May.
It hurts when I turn my neck this way. I heard a voice loud and clear. I looked at the horse. She looked me straight in the eye. When I turn my head, it feels like electricity's going through my neck. Well, that would certainly make a horse rear, I thought. But wait, the horse is talking to me, telepathically in my head. The mare looked at me. She was afraid that what would happen to her. Everyone was mad at her for bucking. So I sent her the thought that a vet would come and examine her and make sure that she was not in pain anymore. And her owner, Joanne, had known me for a number of years as a psychic. But she had asked me to come and talk to her horse, or to tune into her horse to see if we could find out what the problem was. And I had never heard of an animal communicator before, so I was totally shocked that I was telepathically hearing this animal talk to me. There were 14 other horses in that barn, and so we went around to each of the stalls, and I talked to each of the horses. And they told me stories of the owner's brand new fancy boots and how proud the owner was of her boots. And another mare told me that her foal had just been taken from her. And there were all these stories that I couldn't possibly have known if the horses hadn't told me them. So I was driving home, and I thought, okay, now you're crazy. Certifiable. In 1988, people didn't talk about this stuff. It was very unusual back then. So a few years earlier, this is how it started. This is how it all started. A few years earlier, I had taken a class at a community college in spiritual awareness. And I found when they had the class on psychic development, I took to it like a duck to water. And I spent the next several years learning everything I could about remote viewing and spirit communication, just all aspects of using the intellect in different ways is the way I look at it. So when I decided that animals were my thing, the world opened up. And living in Northern Virginia, there's a lot of horse country around there. And I went to many, many, many barns, talked to so many different horses, dogs, cats, birds, snakes, everything. What I learned was all animals communicate telepathically. All the animals interact telepathically, except for humans. And one time I was walking up to a barn and there were two horses talking, and one said, "Oh look, a smart human." They know I can communicate with them, so that's kind of fun. There was a dog at a farm that told me that he liked to watch the birds for the cat. And then I got an eye roll because he realized I thought he was talking about so that he could catch the birds for the cat. And he's like, no, he says, birds are the harbinger of change. If the birds are doing something different, it notifies everybody that there's something they should be aware of. There's something different. And another time I was at another barn, and this horse, he and I were chatting, and this cat came up at the fence, the end of the fence, and he said, "Excuse me," and he went over to chat with the cat, which I found very interesting. But the cat told him that there was a bear in the neighborhood, and she was going from farm to farm, notifying all the animals to be aware that there's a bear around. Well, the owner of the barn turned to me and she said, "My son told me that he saw a bear, and I didn't believe him." So she was really shocked. And another time, there was a young lady who had ridden her horse and come into the barn, and she said, "Oh, I saw a deer out there today." Well, the horse is talking to me, and he said, "The deer told me that there had been a fire in the woods last night." And again, the owner said there were 3 fire trucks out there last night. So they all communicate with each other telepathically, beautifully. But what I've noticed is that they all have very special talents, very special aspects to their intellect. Although, like dogs, their sense of smell is 10,000 times greater than a human's. And I actually had an experience with one dog. He was a service dog, and the owner was an intelligence agent, and he said that his dog could track a scent in Manhattan for a mile 2 weeks after an event. So he said, he came to me and said, "How does the dog do that?" And the dog said, "Telepathic." Now, a telepathic sense of smell just sent my mind reeling. I couldn't even imagine. But they have all kinds of talents and skills. I also need to look at my notes. Oh, a horse. One time at a barn, a horse said that the rabbits were dying down by the creek. And he said, "I think it's something in the water." And I said, "Well, why don't you tell the rabbits not to drink the water?" And he said, "You can't tell a rabbit anything." I had a lot of fun at the zoo too. We went often to go to the zoo. Once an orangutan told me she had cancer, which I thought was very insightful. She was wonderful. I enjoyed her a lot. A lion, there was this fabulous lion up the top of the hill, and he could smell that there was an impala up on another hill who was ill, and it drove him nuts that he couldn't go and take that impala out. That was his job, it was his duty. And to have an ill animal around, he just felt like it was going to infect the whole herd, and he should have taken it out. So that gave me a different insight. Then there was Mopey. Mopey was a giant silverback gorilla. He was gorgeous, this massive, massive animal. and they had brought him to the zoo to mate with 2 females. Well, the troop that he had come from, he was not the alpha male, so he was not allowed to mate. So I told him that if he didn't mate with them, my husband was going to. He was not happy that I did that. Because the next time we went to the zoo, Moby tried to attack him. He kept banging up against the glass wall. Ooh, it was really scary. Thank goodness that glass wall was there. But Moby did mate with the females. So the job was accomplished there. I've had a lobster tell me that he said, if you don't stop dumping your trash in the ocean, it's going to come back on you. I'm like, I hear you. Oh, and there was a leopard at this animal preserve for animals that had appeared in Hollywood movies. And there were large animals. There were elephants and lions and all of that. And right near the gift shop was a leopard who said, can I have just one of those little kids over there by the gift shop? Creep me out. Usually when animals talk to me, they talk about illnesses or injuries, or who they like to hang out with and stuff like that. The owners usually talk to me about behavior problems. And health issues oftentimes cause behavior problems. But the other thing I discovered is pretty much all animals I've found, have a pack mentality. There's a hierarchy in their community. And if the alpha is doing their job, then everybody else feels secure, and they all know what they're supposed to do. And it works really well. But humans, I've discovered, also have the same thing. There is a pack mentality. But one of my favorite things that ever happened to me, I was at a barn that had 12 Jack Russell Terriers. And those dogs moved like a school of fish. And just going from one thing to the next. And it was so cool that it was this perfect entity as they moved together. But overall, just understanding the intelligence that we don't understand with each of these species, it's a whole world that we can explore. Thank you.
So, all I'm going to say is this. It's Key West, right? And the mating and the gorillas and all that shit. But here's what I got from that, ready? Here's what I got from that, ready? God damn it, I knew Mr. Ed could talk. I knew it. Okay, knew it. And they sold us a bunch of bullshit. And I will also say this, that the rabbits, fuck the rabbits. One of the things that we encourage at these storytelling events is to have somebody from the audience come up and tell their story. So we're going to have one more storyteller here that I'm very, very looking forward to. And then we're going to have a hat. We're going to have a 15-minute intermission so everybody can pee. Becky giving me a sign.
Just the cards.
Yeah, we have the index cards. Last time we had somebody that came up and told a speech and we were like, wow. So if you want to tell your bit, we would love that because that's what this is all about. Again, we don't steal thunder here, but I will tell you this. This is a gentleman who came into my life out of nowhere at a time when I really, really needed him. And I guess that's the way that the universe works. So, Dr. Mater, please.
I just had back surgery, so they were kind enough to give me a stool. I don't think I could stand even for 6 minutes. Wow. Frank, Karen, Diane, you know, how do I follow that? So awesome. And Diane, I sure could use your talents on a lot of my cases. So I tell you, thank you. Those are awesome. I'm extremely humbled to be here. Tony, Rita, Studios at Key West, Emily from Books and Books outside, all the people that have made this possible. How about we take a minute and thank them? This is what the keys are all about. And what I'd like to do is just, and I appreciate this, it's so humbling for me to spend the next few minutes and just share a couple of my passions. And two of my biggest passions are the Florida Keys and the human-animal bond. So how many people here have pets or grew up with pets? How many people here live in the Keys? So we all have something in common. Okay. Well, I'm not a funny guy. I hope I don't make you cry. I think I've got a story that'll make you appreciate why we love it here so much. My grandparents built the third house, the third privately owned home of Key Biscayne. So it gives you an idea how long they lived there. And then they sold that house to my parents. That is where I was born. I was actually born in the house with a houseboat rocker. And that's where I grew up until Uncle Sam took my father away to Vietnam. And when they did, then the whole family got moved, as military families do, to a military base in Hawaii, which is where I grew up. So I went from one island to another. The big difference is that over there's no bridge, so you're stuck. Hurricane Irma kind of changed my wife's and my life, as it did many people. And our house got washed away, and everything we owned is somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. I told my older sister, who lives in New York, that I was doing this, and I was all excited about it. And I was like, I don't have any pictures of that anymore. She sent me a picture, so I'm going to share this with you. This is my family in Key Biscayne, circa 1960. This little guy right here is me when I'm cabin rules. So I had something for animals way back then. My older brother used to take me out in the swamps, and we used to go snake hunting, and that's kind of where my love for animals started. Anyway, so after Hawaii, I ended up going to veterinary school in California. From there, I ended up moving to Los Angeles, built a big practice in Los Angeles. That's where I met my wife. Made a lot of money, but it's just a big city, you know. We both love the water. We both love to dive. So we said, hey, you know what? Let's go to the Keys. I want to see where I was born. I want to go back to my roots. Got it in, Tony. I want to go back to my roots. I want to do some diving. Well, we both had a very good friend who was a veterinarian in Big Pine Key. And he said, listen, if you ever come to the Keys, look me up. I'll take you out diving. I'll show you my favorite spots. I'll show you the Keys like a local does. And he goes, we'll have a good time. So, hey, you know, how can we turn that down? So we flew out here. We looked up our buddy. I'll call him Doc Jim. And we were about to go diving. And he goes, hey, Doug, he goes, I got a huge favor to ask. And I said, sure, anything. He goes, he was a veterinarian. He goes, I've got this dog, really good client. The dog has been really sick. I've been working on it for about 6 months. I've run hundreds of dollars worth of tests. I've done all sorts of treatments. It's not getting better. He goes, I know you're on vacation, but would you do me a huge favor? Could I show you the records? And would you mind if we stop at his house on the way to go diving and you look at his dog? And I said, no, yeah, happy to do that. He goes, well, I'll pay you. I said, no, come on, let's just go do it. I'm happy to do it. So we got in this truck, we drove over to this guy's house. I met this gentleman, super nice guy, loved his dog to death. You know, part of the family. I don't know about you all, but our pets are our family. Yes, they sleep in our bed and all that other stuff, but another story. So he had this beautiful blue little pit bull, sweetest dog could be, but it had been sick for quite some time, lost a ton of weight. Doc Jim gave me a copy of the records. I went through all the blood work, I looked at the x-rays, and my wife is a veterinarian too. You all probably know her. Everybody knows her, Dr. Jerry. She's over there. She's awesome. She's and so, you know, I looked at everything. I gave the dog an exam and had some ideas. I told the owner what I thought was going on. I told Doc Jim what was going on. I said, here's what I would do if you would come to see me in my clinic, and I would give this a try, and I really, good luck. I think there's a decent chance that your dog's going to be okay. He was so grateful. You know, so many people are, because again, for many people, pets are part of their family, you know? And I know I would cut off my arm for any of my animals. And so he was really thankful. He pulls out his wallet. He goes, here, let me pay you for your time. I said, no. He goes, you're on vacation. He goes, I got to pay you for your time. I said, no. I'm happy to help. It's a pleasure to meet you. Any friend of Doc Jim's is a friend of mine, you know. I said, just keep me posted. Let me know how things go. So we went diving. And I think as everybody here knows, the diving was spectacular. I mean, we just fell in love with the environment here. All the animals. We loved the people. Everybody we met. Everything was just amazing. And it was like I was home, you know? So we get back to California, and the first thing we do is we start looking at our calendar and going, when can we go back to the Keys? Well, it didn't take long. So fast forward about 3 years, we sold everything we had in California, rented a van, moved all the native animals out to the Keys. We bought this old house. The owners had died actually in the house. It had been sitting empty for like 2.5 years. We moved into it. Fortunately, the wife got a job, and so she was making some money. I was trying to make a living writing and lecturing and consulting. So I'm sitting in this old house at my window with my dog and cat in the room, and you all know what it's like in the Keys. You know, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes, right? So I'm sitting there looking out the window, and the front starts to come in. The sky gets really dark. The clouds get super angry and boiling. I'm watching the lightning storm come in, and all of a sudden, I see this perfect white-blue bolt of lightning strike the power line in front of my house. And of course, I'm kind of shocked, and everything happened in a nanosecond, but it felt like it was in slow motion. And so then this big fireball the size of a Volkswagen starts rolling down the power line right at my house. And I'm going, I've never experienced this before. I don't know what to do. So then kaplowing. The whole house shakes. The dog and the cat scream, jump up, start barking and running around. And then my computer just freaks out. The outlets on the wall start smoking and sparking. The TV, which I was watching the news or something, just blew up. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And so my first stop was my pets. So as soon as things kind of settled down, I ran around, I found them, I hugged them. They were shaking like crazy. I was shaking like crazy. I made sure they were all right. And then I realized, shit, excuse me, I'm sorry. And so I ran around the house looking for fire, didn't see anything. I ran outside, looked up on the roof, didn't see anything. And I waited for my heart to kind of settle down a little bit. Went back in the house, of course, no power, right? Because we just got slammed by lightning. But the phones worked. You guys remember phones? Well, they had a different line, so the phone still works. So I got out that thing called the phone book. Most of you remember that? And I went to electricians, and I started with A, and I just started calling. Boom, boom, boom down the line. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who to call. Nobody answered or answering machine. I'm sorry, we're out in the field. Leave a message. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Well, my house is hit by lightning. I need somebody now. Thank God I got to the last name in the phone book, and somebody answered. And he was cool. He was nice. He goes, calm down. He goes, this happens all the time here. He goes, you're going to be fine. He goes, first thing I want you to do is call the fire department. I go, I don't see a fire. He goes, doesn't matter. Have them come out, check your attic, check the walls, make sure you don't have a fire brewing someplace. Call the fire department. The fire department came right out. Shortly after they arrived, the electrician showed up. Very nice. I met him, shook his hand. He goes, let me get started. He walked around for 2 hours, went up in the hot attic. He went up on the roof, took a ton of notes, came and found me. I'm still kind of shaking. I called my wife and let her know what happened, and she's freaked out. She wanted me to come home. I go, no, it's hotter than hell here. You stay at work. So he came up to me and he goes, you got a lot of damage here. Because I'm really sorry. He goes, I was able to get one outlet working. And he goes, I actually got some power to your fridge. He goes, it'll hold you tonight. I'll be back first thing in the morning. Now, amazingly, as you all know, living in the Keys, he actually showed up. He didn't have his kids in the car. And he worked for 10 hours straight. I watched this guy work. I don't even know if he took a potty break or a lunch break. At the end of the day, I'm kind of pacing back and forth. I couldn't work. I couldn't write. His computer's down, everything else. I was like, oh my God. And I'd go out there and I'd watch him. I could tell I was annoying him, so I went back inside. So at the end of the day, he's sitting in his truck, writing in his notepad. And so I walked out. I went to the fridge first, and I grabbed a semi-cold beer. Walked out, popped the top off, handed it to him, and I said, thanks so much. I said, I really appreciate it. I said, you're a lifesaver. And he goes, well, you got a lot of damage here, man. He goes, I can't replace your TV. I can't replace your computer, your electronics. He goes, but you got new outlets, you got new wires, you got a new fuse box. He goes, because you're going to be okay. And he goes, I even put in a lightning arrestor, so when you get it next time, it won't be so bad. And I go, great, thank you. And anyway, so I go, I said, I'm thinking, God, we just moved here, our credit cards are maxed out. I go, all right, what's the damage? How much do I owe you? I know it's going to be bad. I said, I sure hope the insurance company's going to cover this. And he looked at me, and he takes his clipboard, he closes it, he puts it down on the seat. He looked at me, and he goes, nothing. I said, what? He goes, nothing. You don't owe me anything. And I'm thinking, okay, this is some kind of weird island joke. And you were here 2 hours last night. You came out immediately. You worked 10 hours today. I said, you just spent, I'm guessing, a couple $1,000s in supplies fixing my house. I don't know you. And I says, you're not going to charge me? I said, what's the joke? He goes, no, there's no joke. He goes, you don't remember me, do you? And I looked at him, and I got to admit, one of my biggest faults is I've met so many people in my life, I don't remember all the faces. Now, I remember animals. I show you your dog, I show you your cat, or your snake, and the rabbit. Okay? But I don't remember the people all the time. And I said, sir, I'm really sorry, I don't remember. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. He goes, you only met me for like 10 minutes. He goes, remember about 3 or 4 years ago, you were out diving and you came by some guy's house with Doc Jim? And I said, yeah. He goes, that was me. And I said, oh. And he goes, yeah, you took a look at my dog. And I said, and I remember, it was the blue pit bull. I said, I remember your little dog, the little blue pit bull. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, no offense to Doc Jim. He goes, but he worked on my dog for 6 months. He goes, I spent thousands of dollars with him. He goes, the dog never got better. You came to my house on vacation. You spent 10 minutes there. He goes, you gave me some advice. I followed your advice. My dog got better, and it's been completely normal ever since. I go, that's fantastic. And he goes, you don't know how much that meant to me. He goes, that's my family. He goes, I've always wanted to say thank you, but I didn't know how to get a hold of you. He goes, this is your thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. One of the things about Doug Mader that you may now start to get a glimpse at, there are people that are great at their professions, and he's definitely a great veterinarian. But here's where he stands out. Doug Mader is a healer. And I'm not just talking about animals. Because I know that his friendship over some of these tough times that I've had qualifies him as a healer. And I love him for that. Thank you so much, Doc, for your great story. You look at people that, people move down here, and I can tell right away if things are going to work out for them or not. Because the people that stay here and make it work are willing to do something for you without asking for anything in return. And when you live on a small island at the end of the world, that gets hit by storms, both literally and figuratively, you need to be able to reach out to somebody, not expecting anything in return, because it comes back. Okay, what we have is we're going to take 15 minutes for you to pee, so you can get a cocktail. Please come back, because I'm going to tell you, I think, how did the first half go? We're going to encourage you right now. You know me, you know where to find me. I live on Flagler and Fifth, the house where my wife puts a 30-foot penguins. If you have a story, you don't know, I apologize. You have a story.
Best house on the island.
If you want to share it, let us know. So what we're doing right now is Becky's holding a beautiful hat that I got in Venice, Italian hat. And some index cards. If you want to come up here and tell a story, we'll pick a name out of the hat, and we'll let you tell your story. I'll say this, I've been working real hard with Becky and with Daashia, and bringing some people back to me, like Stephanie Capel and McPhillips. We want to do a storytelling clinic. Because we want you to tell your stories, but some of you don't feel real comfortable about it. So you know what? We're going to show you the process, man. Because storytelling to me is so important for our future. Becky. I better have a baby. She's got that. Thank you. This is my 6th wife. And 6. And I told her about a month ago that never before in my life did I understand what it meant to love a woman. So, intermission. So here we're going to do the second act, and we looked long and hard at how we were going to create this roster. Okay, and thanks to Becky mostly, we created a roster on purpose. This is the way that it's done. So you got your name in the hat, and okay. So I talked a little earlier about something, but now I want to expand on it a little bit. So if you don't mind, Rita Troxel, would you please join me on stage? My wife said drink water. I said there's water in orange juice. Maybe vodka too. So. Yeah. I'm just real quickly, there's your microphone. I'm real quickly just going to say this again. I sat on this idea for over 10 years. I would discuss it with people, discuss it with my wife. Never got up off the couch. And then all of a sudden, this little 123-pound young lady. I'm sorry. I apologize. This bantamweight. Frank. Is it bantamweight, Frank? Yeah, I think so. She comes up and she writes this damn book with all these people. How the hell in the Key West, without Mr. Ed's help, of course, do you get 50 people to write 70 stories? So, you know what? That started it. Rita Troxel is my muse. And another way to put it at it, Rita Troxel is the one that lit the flame under my crack pipe. So, I love her for that. There's your microphone. It should stay.
Okay, I don't speak as loud as Tony.
Nobody.
I'm not looking. All right. It is you. She said to me earlier, I don't want to get up on stage. I don't want to talk. I don't need that. Well,
But I need it.
but you need it. So
I need it. Here's what's happening.
So, I actually do talk loud as that. When you live with him, you have to. But tonight is about my roots. And Karen, thank you. You inspired me to get up here. I got a text message from my mom on Wednesday, and it said, "Do you or JMO want any of Susie's Flurry jerseys?" Now, I know some people in the room know what that means. Tommy Ryan knows who Flurry is. He is the best goaltender, frankly, that the Pittsburgh Penguins ever had. Woo! It's true. It's a true story. He's better than Tom Barrasso. Tom Barrasso had that Coke problem. But Flurry was not just a great goaltender, he was a gracious professional athlete. And my life, I am from Pittsburgh. That is my roots. And my life, I've spent most of it trying to get rid of the residuals, meaning the way they talk there.
Downtown.
I don't say things like yins. Try not to say downtown. I certainly don't use phrases like Chiche. That means, did you eat yet? Yin's going on a south side later. Chiche? Watch them Steelers. Didn't see the Steeler game. When Fat met my family for the first time, he said, "Just tell me when they're talking to me." English is not his first language, and he struggles with accents. He struggles with English accents, and he really struggles with the Yinzer accent. So he spent the entire week listening for his name. Kind of like this. But one of the first people that took him in was my Aunt Sue. I have a very strong matrilineal lineage. I was raised by women, even though my parents were still married. They've been married since 2 years before I was born. They still are married. But it was my mom's mom, it was my mom's aunts, and it was my mom's sister that raised Mandy and me. We were so close that losing a great aunt to me was like losing an aunt. We were a group of 6, 7 women, and this summer we lost my Aunt Sue. Which is why my mom wanted to know, do I want one of her flurry jerseys? Because it's not just about the sports team. It's not just about the city. It's about Sue's. It's about having a piece of her. I haven't had the opportunity to truly mourn her because our life's been a little crazy this year. And this is just another thing that was crazy. But the reality is, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the confidence to move here without having been raised by these strong women. And they are my roots. And my aunt took me to my first concert. I saw Elton John when I was 8 years old. Who does that? My Aunt Sue took me. She taught me to learn how to love sports as a woman. She taught me that it was okay to do those things. Frankly, she taught me how to drive a stick shift when I was 12. If you've ever been to Pittsburgh, driving a stick shift in Pittsburgh is not that easy. And she taught me on a hill that served as the playground for my Catholic grade school. But because she taught me how to drive a stick shift at 12, I was able to teach my great nephews how to drive a stick shift. One of them when he was 12, and the other one when he was about 20. And Fat and I were going out of town, and I said, listen, you can ride your bike, or you can drive this car, so let's figure it out. He figured it out. He had a girlfriend up the keys, so he figured it out real quick. The thing is that you don't really appreciate your roots until you start to reflect on them. And I've had a lot of opportunities to think about my roots recently and what they really mean. And it's more than just being from Pittsburgh, and I will always be from there. I will never live there again as an adult because winter and spring, most of summer. There's more cloudy days in Pittsburgh than there is in Seattle. That's a good thing, love that. And then you go back to fall where it's super gray again, still. But I think about things that my aunt taught me and told me, and I hear her saying to me every time I take a selfie, back, take a picture. Because that was her. I take these ridiculous selfies because Susie taught me to take these ridiculous selfies. I remember her walking around with the camera and saying, hey, take my picture. To her husband, to a child, to whatever. There's plenty of reasons that Susie wanted her picture taken. And she helped to make me who I am. So when I brought Thad into the family, there was a little bit of an age difference. He's older than my mom. My Aunt Sue was younger than my mom. And it meant so much when she accepted him as part of the family. And when I looked back on my family pictures, when we were compiling them for Sue's memorial, I noticed in almost every family picture, Fat's not standing next to me. He's standing next to either my mom or Sue's, and he's got them in big bear hugs. So when I think about my roots, it's not just that I'm from Pittsburgh, it's that I'm from this group of strong women, and they made me who I am today. I love you, Susie.
So hello, I'm Rita Troxel, and I'm going to tell you about the root beginning of Home at the End of the World, which is the book that refers to. And started out about 17 years ago. My friends and I would sit around and we would always tell stories about back in the day. And whoever was new and hadn't been here, they still had to listen to the stories of back in the day, where I'm sure they got really, really sick of hearing our stories. And the thing of it is the stories would not always be the same. My good friend Tony Falcone, who used to have Fast Buck Freddy's, he and I would butt heads about, no, it didn't happen that way. No, it did happen that way. So I said, you know, we have to write this down because we're not getting any younger. People are going to forget. So I'm going to try and put these stories together. And it was before Facebook. It was before we did that much on the internet. And so I started sending emails to people and saying, do you want to write a story? It has to be first person, nonfiction, your story. It can't be anybody else's story. And it could be about anything.
Be nice. You told us to be nice.
And I did tell you to be nice. I had a few stories submitted, and they were snarky to individuals, and I wouldn't put them in. So, yes, you have to be nice. I didn't care what the truth was, because when that story arrived in my mailbox, typed out, I read it in a shock, and I was like, so if I put this in the book, do I have to put the book in a brown paper bag to get it out the door? I don't know. So this other friend of mine, Dee Dee, she had a blog, and people were writing stories for her blog, and she said, hey, I'll put it out there that you're going to do a book, and if anybody wants to write stories, they should send them to you. Stories started coming in from all over the world, and it just snowballed. But I had a full-time job. I was a single parent, and I didn't have time to try to edit the stories. And I had promised everybody that I wouldn't edit the stories except for punctuation and grammar. Then it was pointed out to me by Ann Beatty that the stories were so uneven that I really did need to edit them. So that took years. And then finally, when I was going to retire, I said, that's it, I'm going to do the book. And I began with my friend Jamie Alcroft, who lives in Los Angeles, who was part of the Mac and Jamie comedy team. Yeah. And really funny. Remember the trash truck? What was it? Snow? Free snow removal. They were very funny. They were on lots of lists as a first-time thing for Home at the End of the World. And Tony is carrying the flag forward, which is a great thing. So, that's the story of the book. This is the germ and the brilliance of the Story Slam today. So, first, Daashia. Daashia.
Yeah.
Cochran.
Thank you so much. How's everybody doing? We get our party breaks in. So I got a little story. It's kind of for abbreviated version of my life story, but how I got here to the Keys specifically. Any East Coasters in here? East Coast? West Coast? Where are you guys from? All right, well, my story started in Pittsburgh, PA. Yeah. Yep, I was born there, McGee Women's Hospital. And by the age of 2, my parents were both from that area, Kiski and Springdale, respectively, if you know the area. And, we were Yinzers. And so by the age of 2, though, they decided they wanted something else. And we loaded up the U-Haul and moved out to San Diego. And so that was quite a different environment from Pennsylvania, moving to San Diego, California. And everybody plays soccer out there. I don't know if you guys know, but that's like the thing in California. So by the time I was 3, they already had me in one of those little midget leagues, running around, chasing the ball and trying to attempt soccer. Well, that led me to really learning that athletics was going to be my thing. I excelled at sports, and that was something that I was really good at. So I started to play with the boys more often because they were faster and stronger, and I wanted to be faster and stronger. But there came a point from soccer. I also played baseball and a number of other sports. There came a point where it wasn't cool for me to be playing or starting over their sons anymore. So a funny little story. There was a funny little story. About the age of 7, 8, I was playing in a baseball league. It was all boys and me and maybe one other girl. I don't know. But there was a protest had, and there was some upset parents that I was starting over their son, and the way they got me was doing the rule book apparently in baseball requires you to have a jockstrap on. They pulled the rule book out on me, guys, and I couldn't provide one, so softball it was. And so, from that age on, I moved over into more the female world of sports. I played softball and basketball, started there too, which ended up being my college love. And what I learned there basically is just, I learned how to channel my energy. And that's what sports became for me, an opportunity for me to learn how to use my energy effectively. And so I stayed with that. And eventually basketball ended up taking me to college. And I got to play in the NCAA finals, which was quite an experience. We made it all the way to the Elite 8, which was really cool. I remember flying into Pine Bluff, Arkansas that year, 98, and not to date myself. We flew into Pine Bluff, and I remember walking in, to the gym, and all these amazing athletes were in there, and we walked into the locker room, and they really treat you really well. I walked in my new jersey with my name on it, was hanging up in my section of, the locker room, the shoes laid out. It was just like the dreams I had had always, and so I will never forget that, but it just reminded me that I wanted to be able to pass that on. Now, kind of fast forward a little bit, after college, I went to the military, and after the Army, I was a police officer there. After the Army, I went and became a police officer in St. Louis City. So a chunk of years there, moving from, it's disciplined, right, to play sports, but this is a different kind of discipline that I picked up when I was in the military and law enforcement. And I really felt like I had started to absorb just a lot of negativity. And so I wasn't playing my sports anymore, and I really needed that again. And I found the St. Louis Slam football team. I don't know if you know, but there's actually a whole world of women football players here in the United States. Every major city has a team. And the St. Louis Slam has 4 championship Super Bowls. And so I just happened to be in the luckiest city at the time. And I joined up with those girls and played for a little while and realized that I think this is what I need to be doing. So I came to a point in that career where I decided I was ready to go back to the ocean and get back to my roots, which was learning to channel this energy in a more creative and positive way. And so my friends who had just moved down to Fort Lauderdale, who had spent some time in Marathon, said, hey, come check out Florida, you know, and I knew California. I knew I missed that water, and I really wanted to get back to the ocean and do some surfing. And they were like, the water's like 80 degrees down here. I could try Florida. So I come down and I check out Fort Lauderdale. Do you know how hard it is to find a job in Fort Lauderdale? I put out like 500 applications. I could not get a single one. My friends who I was staying with actually were driving to Marathon Thursday through Sunday to work at Annette's. Remember Annette's? It's now Florida Key Steak and Lobster House. And so they were coming down, and I would watch all our dogs. We had 4 mastiffs between us, so somebody had to stay home with the bears. So that was me at the time. And one of the times they came down, I was like, you know, I want to come see what this is about. And I came down with them, and I hung out around Annette's while they did their shift. And I realized, how did I not know about this? I'm looking around, and I felt tears just kind of overcome me, like this was the next chapter. And I remembered instantly reading a book called Island of the Blue Dolphins when I was in kindergarten. I don't know if you guys know about that, but it was a pretty standard read during my years. I'm not going to repeat those again. But yeah, Island of the Blue Dolphins. It was about this girl who was, you know, all on her own on the island, and the descriptions of like the shells and the views and her experiences in the water and how magical it was to be connected to nature and earth that way really resonated with me. And I was like, oh, maybe I should just give this a try down here. And so I quickly moved down into Marathon and became I just really loved that community. I became a part of that community. I started a gym there called Phoenix Rising, and I got back to my roots, which was helping people live a healthy and happy lifestyle through physical movement, through moving the energy in their body. And that felt really good to me. And I was coaching, went back to basketball, and I had 7 full years of coaching the kids there at the rec leagues, and I really loved doing that. During my time in Marathon, though, I also really picked up on something new, you know, intuition, feeling, being able to move energy. I went to a intuitive arts fair at Marnie's place over in Big Pine. If you don't know, Good Food Conspiracy, great place. She's been there for like 35 years. She's an amazing woman with some very interesting talents and healing capabilities. Well, she was having these regular events there, and I went back and I was walking through just admiring all of the lovely crystals and psychic tarot readers and all of these very interesting people doing Reiki and sound healing. And I remember being stopped in my tracks at one moment to this sound. I can't make it for you because I don't have a pretty singing voice, but it was the crystal bowls. And if you haven't experienced it, it is a sound that could literally just stop you in your tracks. It's harmony in one note. And I remember it affecting me in such a way that I felt like I really needed to share that with people in some way and add that to my practice. So over the next 7-8 years, I had gotten a set of crystal bowls and I was offering them to the community, and it just felt so amazing to be able to share this and to hear people's experiences and for them to be able to relate that back to me. I felt like I was really doing what I was supposed to be doing. And most recently, I'm now actually working with tuning forks as well. And so that's something that I'm going to be offering here. I've been in Key West for the last 3 years. Post-Irma, ate my house up in Marathon. Started a new life for me down here in Key West, and I couldn't be happier. You guys are a 100% amazing community. I was welcomed with open arms, and the vibe that I like to put out, I received immediately. So I want to say thank you to Tony and Becky and to Rita and everybody here at the studios for this opportunity to speak to you tonight, and for for being able to share my roots and what feels good to me. So thank you so much, everyone.
Wow, Daashia, that's just a beautiful and fascinating story, and we're so happy to have you. In addition to being a great storyteller, Daashia is also a videographer, and she videotaped the first Story Slam, and now this one, and we love you for that.
So happy to do it.
And next up is a wonderful human being who happens to be the mayor of Key West, Teri.
Thank you so much, and it is such a wonderful night not to be talking about cruise ships or fantasy cruise. You know, one of the sad things, I was telling Dara where I was coming tonight, and she said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, Tony asked me to talk about roots and about what got you where you are today. And as I was telling her that, I reflect back how sad it is, because the longer you're in public service, it seems like the less and less you share with people. So tonight, I'm here to share. And oddly enough, one of the things in my life that had probably the greatest impact that somehow got me where I am today is softball, is women's athletics. I'm a 3-time All-American collegiate second baseman. It's kind of an interesting career, and oddly enough, 2 weeks ago, the Omaha World Herald published an article about the John F. Kennedy women's softball team, which is the team that I played on, and how we were actually the first winner of the College World Series. You hear a lot about Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and UCLA and all those teams out there right now, but a little town of 7,000 people and a team of 12 women actually set a number of records in the early 70s, and I'll tell you a little bit about Title IX also, because we were very instrumental in bringing about Title IX to women's athletics. But let me bounce back a little bit. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. I was born and raised in a town of 900 people in the middle of Iowa. I have great parents. My father and mother are both really hardworking people. They both passed now. My father was a plant manager for an alfalfa plant, which took alfalfa and made it into pellets, and that's feed for cattle. And my mother was a dry cleaner. She stood all day long and pressed clothes at the dry cleaner. When I played sports all my high school career and was pretty good at them, but I decided I wanted to go to college. And Mom and Dad said, well, we don't have money for you to go to college. So in my senior year, John F. Kennedy College came out and said, we would like you to take a look at our college, and we can give you some money to play basketball and softball for us. Well, it certainly wasn't enough to pay college tuition, so what do you do in a town of 900 people but you go down to the local bank? So I walked down and I made an appointment with Jim Malloy, who was the vice president of the bank, and I said, Mr. Malloy, I said, I need money. He said, what do you need money for? I said, I need money to go to college. And he said, will you pay us back? And I said, yes, I will. And 2 weeks later, I had a college loan to go to college. At any rate, I get to this college, and it's got 1,000 students. And they were one of the first colleges to give women's athletic scholarships. We had the first women's basketball team that went to China. We were 3-time World Series champions in softball. And we would play about a season of about 60 to 65 games while I was in college. And then our team would go on the Women's Open Fast Pitch Tour every summer, which meant that we all had to stay on campus. We all had to get jobs, and we were working. I worked the country club, I worked in the library, and I worked out in the field to make money. But we would take off every single season, either go to the East Coast or West Coast or to the South. And we traveled with quite a group of very talented women. Our pitcher, our star pitcher, was from an Indian reservation, Georgia Gomez. And she was outstanding until she got her check every month, and then she would be missing for about 3 days. We would find her, sober her up, and get her back out onto the field. But she threw an incredible pitch. She was about 5'4", stocky woman, but just an incredible talent. So every summer we would take off, and we would go out on the Women's Open Fast Pitch Tour. And we had the opportunity, if any of you have ever heard of her, we played against Joan Joyce and the Rebastos Breakettes. And Joan Joyce was the finest women's softball player in the country. In fact, the king in his court would play her every year. She would pitch against him and would strike every single one of them out. I mean, nobody could even touch the ball. And she was the first woman that I ever saw that would stand there, which looked really close because she was a big woman. And she would throw a drop and a rise and a curve, and was really the first time that we got into that level of softball. But as we traveled around the country, and we did it on a shoestring, we would hold clinics for young girls everywhere that we went to earn money so that we could pay for our hotels and our meals. We traveled in 2 Ford vans, 12 of us. There were 12 players and then the coach and his wife, and we would go from town to town to town and put exhibits on. We put a clinic on in the afternoon, and then we'd play a doubleheader at night. And we do that for about 165 games every summer. So it was just an incredible education. You know, coming from a town of 900 people was the first time when we got to the South that I saw 2 bathrooms. I saw 2 drinking fountains. You know, my town in Iowa, we didn't have a black family as long as I was growing up. So it was an education that I never, you know, could have dreamed of having. Just learning about people. I remember we got to the South and we were getting ready to go into a restaurant, and they ushered us in and they said, except for you 2, which was our black center fielder, Cha-Cha Thompson, and Georgia Gomez, our Indian pitcher. So, you know, we looked at the manager trying to grasp why the entire team couldn't come in. And that was the first time that we said, okay, you know, you can't take those 2, you can't take any of us. And we drove on down the road and away from that restaurant. But first it was just a fascinating growth time in my life. So we got to travel to the United States. We played in every single state, had a wonderful time, and we won the College World Series as a freshman and as a sophomore and as a junior. And my senior year, as we started the College World Series, in our first game, the officials came out onto the field and they said, we have disqualified you. And when the coach said, why were we disqualified? And the reason is because the college gave us women's athletic scholarships. And at that time, the only people that were receiving scholarships were men. And probably the most disappointing thing was that the people that were objecting and the people that turned into college were other women. And they were objecting not because every other college didn't give women's athletic scholarships, but because ours did. So that was in 1973, and about 3 years later, colleges were allowed to start giving out women's athletic scholarships, and we were actually the catalyst to create Title IX for women's athletic programs. So we're very, very proud of that. I just want to say that experience was probably one of the greatest experiences that I've had because I was with a group of women. We worked together, we slept together, we played ball together, we went through a lot of different things in 4 years together. But it taught us as women to be good teammates and to be really good friends and really good supporters. And I think that has helped me carry out through the rest of my life. Because in anything, you gotta be a team player. You just have to be able to work with people. Don't have to go home, don't have to sleep with them, but you gotta be a team player and you gotta be able to work together. And it was just a tremendous experience that I was given. So that's what formed me. And from then I went on to I joined a small private company in Chicago. I started off in medical sales. I moved through the ranks there. I spent 24 years with that company, and I wound up as the European marketing manager for our branch in Wokingham, England. I traveled for about 15 years internationally. I had the world as my territory, which again, you know, a girl from a town of 900 people, you just can't imagine that opportunity that was afforded to me. So I've had lots of great things in my life. Every door that shut opened up a new one. But I've had a really charmed life. I have a wonderful family. I've had a great career, and what better way to end that career than in the city of Key West? Dar and I, when we were vacationing, we were going back and forth between the East Coast and West Coast. We were trying to figure out where we wanted to retire when retirement was still in the picture until 2008. And we came to Key West, and we just fell in love. That feeling that you get. Can't put your arms around it, don't know how to describe it, but you know that you don't ever want to lose that feeling. And then the next year we decided, well, we're going to go to California and see what that has to hold for us. So we decided, no, maybe we better go back to Key West one more time. So we bought at that time a 38-foot diesel pusher RV, and we were trailing behind it a 21-foot trailer with our car in it. Because girls have to travel with all of their accoutrements. Actually, the trailer had 12 cases of wine in it also to get it down there. But we so enjoyed Key West, and it was it's something that you can't describe. It's a feeling, it's a freedom. It's you meet the most unique, genuine people that you ever will in your lifetime. The thing that I still do today is I ask people when I meet them 2 questions. What brought you to Key West, and what would make you leave? Because I think it's so important that as a community that we retain who we are and we keep whatever that unknown factor that we have right now alive and growing in this community. So I want to thank Tony for the opportunity to be up here tonight. Tony and I sat on the city commission for a couple years together. He would sit on one end of the dais and I sat completely on the other end, which was really very good most nights. He would hear something he didn't like, or somebody would say something, and I'd hear a big commotion going on at the other end of the dais. And then I'd hear his leather chair being kicked back, and then I'd hear shuffling around, and then on some evenings he may pick up a big stack of papers and throw them on the floor. And, I'd be leaving Old City Hall, and he'd say, I'm passionate. And I'd say, no, you're rude. But it was people like Tony and Becky and all of you here tonight that make Key West so special. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you, Teri. That was an awesome story. I don't even know which end of the bat is the right end to hit with. So, yay to you ladies. So, our final storyteller is a really bright, funny, outrageous, very honest, amazing human being, and our fearless leader. Fact.
and I'll leave it at that. Whatever you do, please make sure that our mayor continues to be our mayor. When I was a city commissioner for 4 years, give me this damn thing.
There you go.
When I was a city commissioner for 4 years, I wanted to be every meeting the best prepared commissioner. And I will tell you, I support a pay raise for commissioners because it's a full-time job. So I would meet with people, I would meet with staff, and I'd get up there on that dais and say, God damn it, I'm the best prepared. I was always the second best prepared person. I don't know how the hell she does it. I love her dearly, and I hope she continues to lead our city through these hard times. So, I was reminded that I have a couple of announcements to make. Yeah, upstairs will be open, bar will be open if you want to chat to some of these people. And also the next theme is one bad decision. I'm sure nobody here has any of those, but if you do, please get in touch with us. Hang on a second.
We want to hear it.
Yeah, I'll do it when that with my Trust me. If you have one, bring it up. When I was a young boy in Cuba, 8, 9 years old, my father was a journalist. He was a very, very well-known, well-liked journalist. And he could bullshit pretty good and kind of see where I get it from. He was very, very well-liked, and I was the prince. I was the golden prince. I was the oldest son, and obviously I was going to be a great journalist because when your father's a journalist in Cuba, you're not a plumber, you're a journalist. And so I was kind of a little cocky, kind of a little prick, and my pants had to be creased just right, and my hair had to be coiffed just right, and everything had to be color matching, color coordinated. And I had already been told, man, when you hit that age of maturity, you got it made, man. We were never part of the Batista elite, but we made enough money where we had a house in the suburbs, we had 2 cars, and blah, blah, blah. So I was living the life, man. And then Fidel Castro happened. And we had the Cuban diaspora, and I know people that are here that will tell you how difficult it was. Harina con huevo frito, Elena, if you remember, cornmeal, eggs. It was a very, very difficult time. Food was very difficult for us. And so there was a quick change. But I gotta digress for a moment because I forgot a very important part. It'll take a minute. Some of you know that I've been kind of under the weather a little lately. When you face your mortality, when you're told you have cancer, your life changes. Fortunately, I am blessed that what I have is treatable. And I just heard they may forego the 6 chemo treatment, which is, I'll go to church every Sunday because it's that difficult. It really is. And by the way, if somebody says I have cancer, don't start crying. Don't say I'm going to pray for you. You say I got your back. Okay. The silver lining in this disease that has hit me is you all. It's our community. I'm overwhelmed. I have to first of all say my wife Becky. I don't know how I do without her. My daughter Natalie, my grandson, my entire family, my co-workers who have covered for me. That's the silver lining, the amount of love that I get. And I would be remiss at this moment if I didn't mention this. Almost 50 years ago when I came to this town as some Cuban boy out of I didn't know I had family here since 1871 till like the late 90s. But I was a young boy who came from Miami, Cuban, to King. I lived down here, and a local family decided that they would take me in. That I would be part of that family, and whatever I needed was there. To this day, I am a proud part of that family, and I just want to thank you. You know who you are. Thank you very much. So the little Cuban prick gets on Pan Airways and comes to the United States, and we go to live in Wynwood. No, not the artsy-fartsy Wynwood. Now they're charging for you to see their graffiti. It's not enough. But the Wynwood that I went to, there was no Cubans in Miami. I'm sure Elena will tell you. There was no Cubans in Miami in 1960, so we moved into a Puerto Rican neighborhood, be able to talk, et cetera, et cetera. It was kind of a desolate place. It was a very blue-collar place, hardworking people, but hard to see that my life was going to be any better. It became real mundane. The saving grace was that we lived across the street from Wynwood Park. It's now Roberto Clemente Park, blah, blah, rightly so. We literally lived across the street. So we lived at the park, man. Summertime, we were at the park. After school, we were at the park. And particularly in the summers, my best friend and my brother Chicky, rest in peace, another wonderful year for me. And Rolly de Armas, who, by the way, was the bullpen coach for the U.S. Olympic teams, and the U.S. American team in the last Olympics. And he done that for 3 years. He's a Wynwood boy. And we were very close, the three of us. We hung out at the park, we were together. And so typically, breakfast for us was café con leche and crackers or bread or whatever. Lunch was one hot dog. One hot dog. And Grandma, for some reason or another, never understood how to cook a damn hot dog. So she boiled it for like an hour and a half. So the hot dog was as big around and all cracked. And typically the bun was all either stale or whatever. And she'd run out in the middle of the street and she'd holler, Gordo, Chicky, and Luce. And the other kids would throw it out the back and we'd run across the street and we'd boil a hot dog. And we shoveled the hot dog down and that was it. And dinner was sometimes yes, sometimes rice and eggs. It was a very, very economically hard time. Summertime comes around and we're hanging out at the park where we lived our lives. And Rolly's mother and father lived up the street. And Rolly's father worked at a jealousy factory that was very hot and very dangerous. And Angelita was a seamstress. And on Sunday, she would call Rolly and Luce. It wasn't a boiled hot dog. Okay. So we would sit in front in the wall, and Rolly would go in, and she would say, Muchachos, vamos para adentro a comer un almuerzo. No. So, okay, we'd go in and we'd sit down, and never forget, we put our hands on our laps like this, and our gaze down to the floor. It was a very desolate existence. And first, Rolly's lunch would come out. And now you gotta imagine this for kids who are hungry. Rolly's lunch had perfectly roasted 2 hot dogs. Perfect buns with mustard and relish. And next to the hot dogs, a large, hot, steaming pile of French fries. The smell of the French fries alone would make me swoon. So Angelita would say, Muchachos, did you eat lunch yet? See. Of course, it was either a boiled hot dog or nothing. And she'd say, I'm a Catholic. I have food in the kitchen, and I'm not allowed to throw it away because Papa Dios, Daddy God, will punish me. So you boys have got to eat a hot dog. So we each get a perfectly roasted hot dog with a bun and a little pile of French fries. Okay. The old man Rolando knew everything about baseball. He could have been, a sports center. The RBI, the home run, the leaders, and he sat there and he watched the game, ate his hot dog, whatever. So anyways, we'd finish, we'd go out, blah, blah, blah. Next Sunday we'd roll around. Rolly and Luce, same story. We sit on the wall, we come in, have you boys eaten, blah, blah, blah. And that went on the entire summer. Rolando, like I mentioned, worked in a aluminum jealousy factory. And I forget, he hurt his knee one time, and he took his kids there for something or another. It was terrifying. The sound, the smell, the heat, it was terrifying. So he would work there in the summer, extra hours, going early in the morning, and then come home. He put in 8-10 hours at the factory. And he'd come home in that old 58 Oldsmobile of his, rambling. We could hear him 5 blocks away. You could hear the muffler. And he'd tell Rolly, go get fat, go get Chicky. Vamos para la playa. We're going to the beach. All right, great. So we jump in the car. We go across the causeway there in Miami. Some of you know it's from where we lived in Wynwood across the harbor. It's 15 minutes. And we would go to the Eden Rock Beach, which was a public beach. It was gorgeous, right? And every afternoon after putting in a 10-hour shift, he'd go get me and my brother Chicky and his son, and we'd saunter over the causeway, and we would go swimming. And then at the end of the day, he wouldn't even ask us. He would say, "Time to go home, muchachos." And he'd walk over to the little stand, and he would get us ice cream sandwiches. Salty mouth, vanilla, and chocolate. Right? And it was amazing. And I think I started to see something. My brother was younger. I had to tell him a few years later. But I started to see something, and that was that dead end in Wynwood wasn't necessarily my dead end. I started to see that there were options. I started to see that not all hot dogs have to be boiled. I started to see that you can get French fries. I started to see that you could get dinner. And I started to see that at the end of an afternoon, a guy who worked 60 hours a week cared enough to take you to the beach and buy you an ice cream sandwich. It came to me real clearly one day. What Angelita did and what Rolando did was they created a magic potion. It wasn't about the hot dogs. It wasn't about the ice cream sandwiches. It was about opening up a door to a different life. The two of them, I believe in my heart, saved my life. And to this day, what I realized was that Angelita and Rolando concocted a magic potion. And that magic potion was called hope. Thank you very much. Again, a huge thank you to studios. My wife Becky, honey, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do without you. My daughter Natalie. And again, those people in this community that embraced me 50 years ago and treated me one as their own. So, do you guys want to do this again? Do you have stories? Okay, Becky's giving me a sign.
The theme for the next one.
Oh, I thought you said the feed. I was going to say, well, let's call Diane May, have her talk to the animals and make sure we're ordering the right shit, right? Ask Mr. Ed. Anyways, love you, Diane. That was beautiful. The next theme is one bad decision. And I have asked, and she has accepted, I'm so grateful, Gwen Filosa to come and host the next show. So I asked my wife, God damn it, what am I now? I don't get to, she goes, well, you can tell a story, but you're not the host for the next one. I said, well, what are you? She goes, honey, you're the promoter. I don't know if that's a demotion or whatever. My sincere, heartfelt love to you, because we're able to open this up and get people to open up. By sharing our stories, we create more human bonds. We strengthen our humanity. My wife's pointing upstairs. Either the roof is falling, or you're going to go up and have some wine or whatever. If you just
The bar
somebody.
is open for 45 minutes. Upstairs.
Sorry.
Upstairs. Go upstairs.
I said 5 times. We're going upstairs.
45 minutes.
All right. Did everybody hear that we're going upstairs? Raise your hand. I know we had 3 or 4 names in the hat. We ran out of time. If you want to talk to me about the next story or talk to me, here's the way we do it. You got a story to tell? You don't have to. I want to be surprised when I hear the story. You don't have to give me an edit. You don't have to give me anything. Just tell me you're ready to come up and tell the story. I want to finish by saying this. When I approached Daashia Cochran about doing this, I said, I need a videographer. And she said, and I told her it's about you telling stories. And she said, oh yeah, I'm in. And I said, but I haven't told you what I can pay you or if I can pay you. She goes, I don't give a shit. I am in. And so I adore her.
Oh, I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a project in the works. We've applied for a grant where we're going to sit down with Vietnam vets who are now saying, maybe it's time to tell my story.
Yeah.
We're going to sit, me and that vet, Daashia with a camera, and we're going to record what our local people went through in that war. I don't want 50 years from now for our people to say, oh yeah, the U.S. fought a war in Vietnam. No. Vietnam fought a war with Tony Mendes and Bo Anderson and Henry Fuller and Billy Williams and Jerry Hughes. I want them to know, don't take it in a vacuum. It was our people who left blood, sweat, and tear there to make your life better, and I'm eternally grateful. All right, I'll keep talking tonight. Love you, love you, love you. Good night.
Thank you, Tony.